This is Huddle and Whistle, where sports, entertainment, and culture collide. We cover the stories shaping the game, on and off the field. Welcome to Huddle and Whistle.
Welcome to Season 1, Episode 7 of Huddle and Whistle. Today's topic, controversies en route to the Final Four, Women's Basketball Edition. Let's get into it. And we are excited today because we are going to be talking about all of the controversies in the Final Four. And Terry has been on scene for some of these games leading up to the Final Four. So we're excited to hear about what's going on in the world of the NCAA.
Well, I was able to cover the Final Four, so I was present in the building when UConn played South Carolina, and you could see a lot of animation from both coaches during the course of the game. During the first quarter, there is basically a calibration period where you kind of test the refs out and you see how they're calling the game. And they didn't call many fouls. So, a lot of physical contact was made, a lot of no calls. But in the second quarter, there were two calls called on Raven Johnson, star for South Carolina. And that sent her to the bench early. And that totally changed the way in which Dawn Staley had to adjust her rotations, her lineups, but they weathered the storm. But at the end of the game, with 1.1 seconds left on the clock, Gino approaches Dawn Staley and kind of goes ballistic on her. And she responds in like a North Philly fashion, and she has some explicatives for Gino, like, threatening, like, I will put hands on you. And so they had to be separated. And it was very interesting, in Gino's press conference, he blamed the officials for the loss. He said Dawn Staley is able to use foul language towards officials, and there was 6-0 foul calls in Staley's favor, and his player had their jersey ripped. When you go back and look at the tape, she was frustrated because she missed the shot. She missed her own, she ripped her own jersey. And so now she just yanked it off. And so for some reason, Gino feels like it's the officials' fault, and Dawn Staley broke protocol pregame by making him wait 3 minutes before coming to shake his hand. And, it was just wild. It was just a lot of emotions. The tension got to Gino.
Let me just say this. If you get rattled by having to wait 3 minutes, you were not in the game in the first place, because that is just the ultimate ridiculous excuse. And I actually really like Gino and had a lot of respect for him, but he did a lot this game, and it really impacts the way everybody sees him. And the fact that he could not acknowledge his mistakes or acknowledge his lack of, emotional control is kind of embarrassing. And I feel bad for the players. They're supposed to be able to look up to him and respect him and believe that he's leading by example. That was not an example to lead a bunch of young women, especially, predominantly African-American young women, doing that to a female African-American coach. And I hate to make it racial, because I don't believe that there is a racist bone in Gino's body. However, historically, I have known, just from my own personal experience, that men don't want to be beat by women. That's number one. And you guys know this. Come on now. Come on. You guys have played and got talked by guys where if a woman did something to you, it was, oh, man, you gonna get beat by a girl? Guys don't want to get beat by a girl, period. But to get beat by a black girl, black woman, that is like 1,000 times worse. So Gino showed his butt, and it's unfortunate because he could have held it together. She is an exceptional coach. She's not just a black woman. She's an exceptional black woman coach. You got to just take that L and keep your mouth shut and be respectful and have some sort of pride. Like, he lost it, and it's embarrassing.
I wouldn't say Gino has a, racist bone in his body, but I would say that he does have a senile bone in his body. Gino's 71 years old, and honorary old men are just honorary old men, and historically he's had problems with Muffet McGraw. He's had problems with other coaches during
Pat
the course
Summitt.
of this Pat Summit, all of those things. So, I don't know, if we just give him a pass for competitive nature. But what I will say though is that if you complain about another coach's pregame protocol, then you should adhere to postgame protocol because
Absolutely.
Yeah.
he fails and gets a straight F in that area. In that area, he should have gone and shaken the hands of the other coaches. He has his own player, AZ Fudd. This is her last game. Players are bawling, they're crying, and he just walks off and leaves them stranded on the court.
Yep.
People
No
that
support.
win, they deserve South Carolina. They deserve to be acknowledged by arguably the greatest coach of all time in women's college basketball. And he ignored all post-game protocols. So he gets no pass, see now or not. He was wrong.
I 1000% agree.
Yeah, I think for I don't like losing to nobody, whether it's male or female. So
losing to a woman would be worse.
I've lost to Sharice Sampson in basketball, and you know who Sharice Sampson is. So I lost to her in basketball. So yeah, that it doesn't that it was heartbreaking that I lost to a girl. It's just that she was so much better at basketball than I was. So that was what the problem was.
I bet you at the time when you were like, man, I lost to a girl.
Well, no, so she was way taller than me.
Don't make excuses.
And she had way better skills. So yeah, but she taught me some lessons. She taught me some things like, oh my God, women. But I already knew women could ball because I'm a giant Cheryl Miller fan. So with Gino, this is Gino. What we have done in our society when people are winners, we kind of look past their transgressions.
Yep.
Gino, since UConn's program has arrived in the early 90s, from the time he won the championship in 95, I want to say, 94, 95, when UConn won their first championship. And throughout the early 2000s, and well, he's finally displayed it now. Gino is whenever he's lost, he has this beef to settle in the media. He talks bad about other coaches. He talks bad about other programs. He most definitely will talk bad about the refs, and he has no foot to stand on when it comes to refs because UConn benefits so much off of bad officiating going their way. If you watch that UNC game, Sarah Strong should have fouled out in the first half. She was hacking. They reach a lot. They foul. They're very physical. In the Notre Dame game, before halftime, I counted 11 fouls. That was pretty blatant in front of the refs. They did not call. And then the game was close. And it changes the dynamic. Like Terry said, when Raven went out, it changed South Carolina's strategy. If you call the fouls that need to be called, you change the strategy of a coach and what the players can do. Also, it lets them know, like, hey, we're not doing this today. You're not going to be playing this rough, and we're not going to give you this advantage. And you can tell UConn players, because they were complaining to the refs throughout that game with South Carolina, that they are so used to doing what they do and getting away with it that they don't know what a foul is anymore. Reaching, hitting elbows, slapping hands, hitting people with their body on the drive, like not even good defensive position. They get away with it so much that they got it. But Gino, once again, this is who he is. This is who he always been. Always been a cantankerous, petty man. You know what I'm saying? If you read Pat Summitt's book, they're in a restaurant sitting at separate tables, and he keeps yelling her name in the restaurant, making her feel uncomfortable.
Hater.
Got up and left because with Gino, he can take an L, but he can't take an L to certain people that he think is going to mess up his legacy. When he's going up against other high-profile coaches and they've beaten him, that's where he gets really mad at because I think he feels like I got to dominate. But I'm like, dude, 25 Final Fours, 12 national championships. So that means 13 times you've been in the national championship. You didn't win. Right. Some programs haven't even got to one Final Four, and you've been there the majority of the time that there's been NCAA women's basketball. You got to be a gracious loser. Well, let me not say that. You're not going to be gracious in defeat. You got to gather yourself, compose yourself, and say the right things. But
you just have to recognize when you lost to a team that worked harder. It's not even at that level. It's not even a matter of better players, better coaches. Mm-hmm. They worked harder. They did not lose by 2 points or a buzzer beat or, bucket. They
Mhm.
lost by damn near 20 points, right? What was the final
It
score?
was they lost by 12.
Okay, 12.
Yeah,
Like
It's
62,
still not
48.
close. It's not
yeah.
close enough.
Well,
Well,
yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Terry.
so Jim, I disagree with you on one thing when you said UConn doesn't know what a foul is. They know what a foul is when they get fouled. They know when they they argue for
They're
those
used to that.
calls.
They're
And there
used
were
to
some
that.
blatant things that happened in this game with South Carolina where um, Sarah Strong, All-American AP Player of the Year for UConn, had 2 fouls, and she clotheslined Raven Johnson at half court. So it's
Yeah,
blatantly open for them to see, and there was a no call. And then a
Well,
couple of plays after that, McKeer for South Carolina gets clipped. Like in football, this would have been a 15-yard penalty. She got hit in the back, goes to the floor, and in the scramble for the play, the exact same contact happened, and the foul is called on South Carolina. But the energy in the building was very interesting. In the first half, UConn owned the crowd. It was a UConn crowd. You could feel the energy, you could feel the buzz. I was
right.
kind of shocked, like, man, is South Carolina here? Does UConn just travel that well? But then to start the third quarter, uh, South Carolina opened up with a 12-2 run. And then the gym went to another level. The excitement and the buzz. Now you heard South Carolina. Now you heard all the Don Faithfuls. And you could see the worry and the tension on the face of the UConn fans. They were quiet, they were worried, they were agitated. It was it was a very interesting dynamic to see somebody go from exuberant and high level cheering to just worried. Like they were worried. They just got out coached, and Stady talked about how she implemented some new defensive strategies that Sarah Strong hasn't seen this year. And it was very disruptive in denying her the ball. And
Yep.
so, this was just a coaching masterpiece. And, the UConn fans were not complaining. Like they were not complaining about the calls. They were not complaining about anything. They were just worried.
yeah,
Yeah, I loved the dynamics of that game. You have two powerhouse programs, and it's really hard to love one more than the other. I mean, obviously people do it and they pick a side, but for someone like me that just loves the game, it was just exciting to see how much everybody else was enjoying the game despite who was up, who was down, who was getting beat. It was very competitive, but let's not set aside the theatrics in fouling, right? Maybe there were some rough fouls, maybe there were some great actors or actresses, but nonetheless, I think the refs excuse me, not coached. I think the refs refed kind of equally, right? Nobody got an abundance of fouls where the other one did not. Yes, some people got in foul trouble, but overall, you can't blame that game on the refs. I think the refs actually did a decent job in letting them play.
yeah,
Now, as a past player and a current coach, I understand getting angry about certain calls not being in your favor. But I also respect the fact that it wasn't a petty called game and that they were allowed to play through it. Like you got to let them play.
yeah. But these four teams, you have to let them play because they have clearly been the best four teams from the beginning of the season to the end
Yep.
of the season,
Yep.
and not much separates them except for the level of the coach that you have.
Yeah.
Gino's at the top, then there's Don, and then Corey and Vic are, they're there, but they haven't ascended that because they haven't got those titles. But Vic has been on this stage before. Vic has lost a national championship game, so Vic understands, how to raise your level or get your players to raise their level at the time. But officiating does play a big role in a lot of games over the years.
Absolutely.
As a fan, you get frustrated with it because you're just like, hey, what's going on? Are they not seeing it? And as a coach, being a coach and coaching, especially when I coach girls basketball, I always let my girls know after a while you learn who the refs are in your league, how they're going to be officiating. Hey,
Yeah.
today we're going to be aggressive. Hey,
Yep.
look, they call out ticky tack fouls. So hey, let's kind of lay back into the second half before we ramp up our pressure or ramp up our aggression on defense. So sometimes you just got to understand, like Terry said in the beginning, you're just filling it out, seeing what the refs are going to call. Then you make your adjustment because that has to be an adjustment. Sarah, you got 2 fouls. They're not letting you roughhouse. They're not letting you do this. So you're gonna have to back off a little bit. Not saying you let your players score, but you got to back off a little bit because we need you in this game. So
Right.
with some of these things, like and I want to make a public apology to 49er fans. I used to think y'all were the worst fan base in the world. Actually, it's the UConn's women's basketball fan base, the worst fan base in the history of Earth. They
Come on.
are the worst. They
Why?
because they feel they're entitled to be victorious and they can't say something is fair. I had to show one of their fans a foul that Sarah Strong had on and a Hidalgo. He said no, she was vertical. How are you vertical when you walking towards somebody and you hit them as they're making their shot? Or you don't let them land. He's like, no, those are not fouls. You just don't know the game. I'm like, come on, man. Like this is video evidence. They're not calling this. So I just say, you know what? Let's end this conversation right here because I can't show you video proof of what's going on, and you can acknowledge that, and it's okay. UCLA in the Duke game got some calls. I was like, yeah, I don't know about that, but it went in our favor. We were able to pull that game out. So I mean, it's just the nature of the game, but you got to acknowledge that. I don't want to win because I got a bad call. I want to win because I'm the better team. I
Yep.
came up with the better game plan. I want to do it like that. I would hate to have to get the refs involved. So only sport that you can't help but have the ref involved is baseball. They got to call balls and strikes,
Right.
but everything
So
else you can kind of let them play.
I have
Hey,
a
go ahead.
question. I have a question for both of you.
Hmm.
So I label this championship game the program versus the portal. So you have Don Staley, who's built her program over 18 years, and you have UCLA with Corey Close that is going to roll out 5 WNBA players. And none of this is possible without NIL in the portal. Is this the standard and the new norm for college basketball? Is it the portal? Is it the program? Who do you see prevailing moving forward, and winning titles?
The person that can retain their players better. People forget UCLA lost one of the best recruiting classes last season. They all hit the portal. They had 4 freshmen that came in, and they were highly touted freshmen. One went to Oregon, one went to Michigan, the other one went to North Carolina, another one went to Indiana. So they lost 4 freshmen. So she had to hit the portal. And then Corey Close, I don't like 1 year when she got Rice and Jaquez, that was a very good recruiting class. 2 McDonald's All Americans, and she had the number one recruiting class when she had Jordan Canada and Monique Billings and all of them. I don't understand why people don't want to be in Westwood in Southern California, doing that. And part of the reason why I want to say this, UCLA fronts as a sports school. In reality, they always used to tell us, especially when I was an athlete there, we don't need athletics. We make enough money off of research. We're the number one research university in the world. So we
Absolutely.
don't need athletic money. So, and they make it known. Your professors make it known. People around the campus make it known. Oh, they love to cheer you on, but when push come to shove, they kind of don't, they're not very welcoming. So I can see a young lady, young man who comes there, they thinking, oh, I'm a college athlete. I'm on TV. I'm balling. And then you run into some backlash like, hey, man, I'm a student athlete just like you because a lot of students don't understand. UCLA doesn't let you in because you're an athlete. You have to meet all the UC requirements. You have to read just for them to even recruit you to send you a letter. If you're not UC eligible, they don't even bother with you. So people don't know that. So when they want to take out their frustrations on the UC system at the number one applied university in the world and they don't get in, they be like, that athlete took my friend's spot. Or that athlete, no, they getting unfair treatment. Like they bringing millions of dollars into your program. UCLA with this women's team making it to the Final Four last year and getting to the finals this year. You know how much that puts your school in a spotlight, especially for women. There are going to be more women wanting to go to the school so they can cheer on the team and do all of that. But then they get there and they
Right.
UCLA was UCLA's.
Well, let's be real. Most people, in my opinion, most players, most athletes enter the portal because they're looking for a better opportunity. I don't think it has much to do with winning. It may not have much to do with liking their coach or their team dynamics. I think NIL has given these players more of a bargaining chip to where they feel like, they can get more and they want to try to get more. We're in a society where, people are losing their asses, like
Yeah.
literally, right? Life is hard in America right now. I don't care what the economists say, how great we're doing. The majority of people are not in that top, 10% of earners. So when a young person has an opportunity to make that kind of money, they are going to make that move. Because a lot of times these people are now the breadwinners, or at least looking at other athletes saying, you know what? I don't have any commercials. I'm repping this sports brand, but I could be over here doing, this and this and that for that brand. It has become so much more than collegiate sports that the portal is kind of ruining the dynamics of what, being a collegiate athlete used to be. And that's okay, but it's going to have to change. And one thing that I don't know if you guys saw it this weekend, but they just put out an executive order trying to limit one transfer in 5 years. Like an athlete now is supposedly going to get 5 years to play, no ifs, ands, or buts, and one opportunity to transfer. And that's going to mess a lot of these kids' mindset up because they had just gotten accustomed to, I don't like what they're doing. Boom, I'm just going to enter the portal. If I
Hmm.
don't feel like I'm making enough money, I'm just going to enter the portal. If they now limit it to one transfer, that's going to make people have to pause and figure out, you've got two options, right? You go and you stick with the first place that you chose or that chose you, or you get that one opportunity to try to make it better. And by God, it better be better because that's it. So it's going to be very interesting, I think, in the future to see which way this goes.
So at the press conference, I asked Coach Staley, what impact has NIL and the portal had on college basketball? And I'm going to paraphrase her response, but basically, she said, for us, it's it doesn't make that much of a difference, or it hasn't significantly impacted them because they still retain their core players. So they still have 4 or 5 core players that still abide by the South Carolina way, and that, so she brought in Tanaya Latson, who was the leading scorer in women's college basketball last year. But Tanaya Latson is best friends and high school teammates with star player Raven Johnson. They won 3 state titles together in high school. So, she was saying that, for a program like hers, if you can keep your core, then it's not as disruptive.
Right.
They have a way of doing things. But I think it's in contrast to that, Corey Close spoke last year when those 4 players left her program, and she said that sometimes you can have too much, like you
Hmm.
have too much talent, and
Yeah.
so you can't play everybody, and
It
you
gets
know
tough.
it's hard, and so I remember earlier this year, one of her former players, one of the people that transferred, refused to shake her hand at the end of the game.
Janiah Barker. Yeah.
Okay, and so I was like, wow, like this is getting real emotional. Like what does this mean for recruiting and coaching when players are just showing their displeasure with a particular program, and so it's interesting. I was just
Yeah, you see with Tennessee right now, Tennessee has a mass exodus. And if you ever watch Tennessee play, they're coaching her substitution style, and you're in for 2 minutes, you're out for 8. Then you're back in for 2 minutes, and she expects you to get off, to do your thing,
Yeah.
and she kills momentum of the players and do things like that. So it's gonna be like Don obviously has figured out a formula on how to retain her players and get them to buy in. Like, hey, look, you may not score 20, but your 12 is going to be so impactful on our team that you need to stay here and keep this going so we can win and win big. And I don't know what their NIL table looks like what's going on, how those young ladies are getting compensated. But whatever is going on, she has lost very little. And the players that she do lose, they go on and be stars somewhere else. So you
Yep.
know that there's talent there. There's talent to be had out there. But I just think moving forward, it's going to be It's going to be more so on the coaches on how you build your program and you represent yourself in the media and to these families, because all coaches are going to lie. All coaches are going to say, I'm going to develop your kid. I'm going to give your kid this. They're going to be this. You don't know that. You know what I'm saying? Because you might we're all meeting each other's representatives. Because I know when UCLA got me, they were like, who's this dude? Yeah, you met the real person that's super competitive and want to play and want to do all this stuff. And if you don't make sense, then we're going to have some issues with what was going on. So you're going to get players like that because a lot of them have been playing so much basketball that they kind of know the game themselves. And they know when you're not using them right, or when you're showing favor to another player, or shoot, my NIL deal package ain't looking right. You know, SC might give me more. That's how we lost London Jones. You know what I'm saying? Who I would have loved to see her on this team. She was like my favorite player on that UCLA basketball team. And I'm glad I got a chance to meet her before she transferred out and take a picture with her. But at the end of the day, you know, that girl was there from day one, and then she spends her senior year across town. So it's going to be interesting on how this looks. I don't mind the one-time transfer. You got people who have been on 5, 6 teams, and they also need to limit how long you can play. Why are there people playing 7 and 8 years of NCAA basketball or football and stuff like that? What are you doing? You're not going pro now. At this point, if you master college within 3 to 4 years, now you need 6, 7, 8 years, bro. Just give it up. You need that. Actually, need that
But,
NIL.
but you brought up a great point that a lot of people, if you look statistically, a lot of players are not going on to that professional level because they're killing it in college sports. So if you're killing it as a 8-year college athlete, and you know that you might make it to the G League, maybe, and there's no money or opportunity there, why would you go?
John Calipari said they have, especially international players, you don't know what their birth certificate is authentic or not. He says you have players that is on their second marriage playing college basketball. It's wild now. They got to figure this out.
Yeah, it's the landscape has gotten crazy, but that's the greed of the NCAA. If the NCAA would have came up with good packages, because back in the days, if you had a homie, me and Marlo got a friend, Dennis. Dennis was in Tucson, Arizona. He was making more from his scholarship money to live off campus than I was, and I lived in a more expensive place. I'm like, man, they jipping me right now because this dude is making that much more money than me, you know what I'm saying, at his school off of his scholarship. So if the NCAA would have just played fair from the beginning, they know that they're making millions and millions of dollars. These stadiums aren't getting built because of somebody's charity. They're getting built because you're packing these stadiums, you're selling paraphernalia, you know, you got players signing all these things, the media rights, ESPN furbished the SEC, all that stuff came from ESPN money. But these players were looking at their coaches driving away in Cadillac, looking at their coaches with the new car, and you know, they just like, I got to get in on this. How they, you know, I'm the one getting all the risk. I'm the one getting hit. I'm the one to get my shot blocked or hitting threes to win the game and stuff like that. Like with Ed O'Bannon in that court case, he's sitting up there playing Coach K, and somebody just, hey man, how much you getting paid to be in this game? You balling. He getting nothing. So now I'm just like, man, y'all selling my likeness and my image and all that stuff. I'm on posters. I'm doing this. I'm in the calendar, but I don't get nothing for this. So the NCAA would have just played fair, because back in the days, your coach bought you a Happy Meal. You were suspended for 3 or 4 games.
Y'all were getting pimped.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, if the NCAA would have, now I remember we had this conversation in the locker room. I said, what they should do is when we come in, they have $20,000 they put in an account. And it's depending on either your eligibility being all the way done or you graduate. Because some people, they're going to graduate earlier than what their eligibility goes. Pay them then. Give them their money. You know what I'm saying? And that would have stuck, because now these guys, they didn't pay 4 or 5 years of a sport. They're not in the league. And now I got to go out into this job market that I've never participated in because I've been an athlete my whole life. So I don't really have a resume. That $20,000 can help them out to start off. You know what I'm saying? They can put that in an account, gain interest off it. All type of stuff could have happened, especially with good financial management and teaching these guys financial things, because how many athletes we hear are broke now?
Yeah, financial literacy is important for these athletes for sure.
So, you know, can the NCAA get it right? Are they even capable of getting it right? So
I think they're going to have to, based on that new executive order. They don't have a choice anymore.
They're gonna fumble it because really the two sports that are getting bushwhacked is basketball and football because and like Marlo said, you hate to put race in it, but those are the sports with the majority of the black athletes, and you add track and field to that, where you got all these black athletes. They don't want them to because they gonna make so much money
Yeah.
because you're gonna have to pay them what they deserve. So they got to find a better way, and I don't think they're gonna get it right because they don't want to get it right.
Mm.
So it's interesting, I haven't read the final orders and the final judgments, but you have some rulings that have come down as it relates to eligibility, where now you are supposed to be able to play junior college sports and have that not count against your eligibility. But it appears that the NCAA is not going to follow that ruling unless you sue the NCAA. So if you sue them, then they will allow you to not have those years count. And so even if you have this executive order from Trump that's supposed to limit the amount of money that a player can make, does the NCAA follow that, or does it take litigation to determine whether or not the president actually has the authority to do that? And whether or not that should be enforced. So I don't even know if the NCAA is capable of getting any of this stuff right.
Yeah, they're not going to get it right. I mean, because that sounds great. You know what I'm saying? If you're allowing people to have 6 and 7 years of eligibility, why not let the JCs? At least those people have gone to class, done some study and coursework. Now you're asking a kid that's coming in from a junior college system to go into a college system and learn competing against people who already know the system. So that takes time. It might be another player in your position that you can't beat out. So now I'm gonna waste my next 2 to 3 years sitting behind this player, or I have to change my position and change my progress to making it to the pros. But I think that they should let that happen since you're allowing people to have extra eligibility because sometimes people they're not big. They didn't I hit my growth spurt in my sophomore year of college. Now I'm this specimen, but now I got to go compete. I think they should allow this to happen, but they're not going to do that because I don't know. They just don't want to.
Got it.
Well, I don't know, guys. It's definitely going to be interesting. Terry, did you talk to anybody else when you were on scene?
So I talked to Coach Corey Close, and she had some interesting comments as it related to. She thought this game, the national championship, was going to come down to the basics, the fundamentals of defense, rebounding, and not turning over the ball. And so she was very clear about that. And, Don's had a very similar take where she was basically saying it comes down to focus and that she's not allowing any distractions, any of the interactions with Gino, any of those things to take away her focus from winning this game. And so, both of them just seem to really emphasize that it's important to get a lot of rest and for players to be, focused and play mistake-free basketball. So, they have very similar takes on it. But the energy and the arena is wild. Yesterday, they had the open practices where you could come watch the teams practice, and the stadium was packed for South Carolina. Like the whole bottom row was filled up, and it's electric. They have music. Don and her players are doing the electric slide, and K. Wayne line dances in the middle of the court. You have all the media that you see from ESPN. They're walking around, engaging the fans. So it's just a great energy in the building. Like if this was accessible to a fan, so they didn't cost you anything. You could come in, and then you could interact with people that you see on TV and your favorite coach and those different things. So it was just a great experience. The NCAA women got this right in terms of how to engage the community and the fans. And like I say, they have the All-Star game here. They had a women combine here for the WNBA. So you could go to all of these things within 15 minutes of one another and really get your full basketball experience.
Nice. That's nice.
Yeah, that's incredible. I can't wait to get there. We are gonna get there, guys. We're gonna get there.
we got action. Let's go. We got action.
Would
You know.
love that. Would love
So,
that.
all right.
Hmm. So when you were talking to both coaches, which one do you think seemed like they had the most concern, Terry? Like who was more concerned about how the action would go, in favor for their team?
The coaches spoke in great reverence of one another. Like they have a rapport and they have a deep respect for one another, but it almost kind of felt like they were friends. Like they have the same kind of coaching philosophy. And, they're saying like, hey man, like at this point, the players just have to execute. Like there's nothing you could really do at this point. So I wouldn't say one seemed more concerned or one nervous. Like, they both had the same kind of energy. I didn't get to stay around for the UCLA practice to see how, coach moved around on the floor, like how she's, was interacting. But Don was very fluid, very relaxed, very laid back. But her press conference was more intense because of the highlighted incident with Gino. And so she was deflecting
Hmm.
the conversation away from that. And so that really took because the press conference is only 30 minutes, but the first 15 minutes was really people asking about the Ariema situation in different kind of ways. And so she was just really staying away from that. So the last 15 minutes was more about basketball. But Coach Close didn't really have to deal with that. And she was just talking about, how they have a game plan where they have to figure out how to beat the depth and the defensive pressure of South Carolina. And so, it's really going to be an interesting strategy of how they impose this because South Carolina has bigs too, so they can match the size of Betts. But the question is, do they want to? Because UConn has elite shooters, so you can't really double their post,
Hmm.
right? And Don Staley was saying that because Laura Betts is so good at UCLA, she poses a different problem because she's been playing against double teams her whole life. So her ability to handle that double team creates a little bit more of a complex problem versus, you have somebody like Sarah Strong who's 6'2" that plays on the perimeter. 6'2"
Yeah.
is not 6'8". So, that's a big difference. So, it's a game of strategy and who will make the best adjustments and who can stay composed. I think it comes down to like composure and focus.
I'm not gonna lie, I love the defensive strategy that they did on Strong. That is 1000% my coaching style. I will shut down your best player and make you have to work around whatever else you think you have. But
Hmm.
yeah, I love that style of play. Sometimes you just have to do it, right? Got to get rid of the problem.
Yeah. This game is, of course, I'm cheering for my Bruins, but this game causes a dilemma for me. When Dawn was at Virginia, just love her when she played with Heidi and Heather Bird, and they were just so good, even though they never won a national championship. And then Raven Johnson is my favorite college basketball player. I love how her leadership and her sacrifices help push this, to where, she doesn't have to do much to be, or it seems like she's not doing much. She does a lot of the background stuff for that team that gets that engine rolling. They put her on Sarah Strong. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a tough ask for somebody that's way smaller, but she did a damn good job. And it's gonna be kind of crazy. Like, of course, I want UCLA to win, but if South Carolina won, one of my favorite players of all time and one of my new favorite players will get the victory. So it's kind of like, I want my team to win, but if they don't, I'm not going to be too upset. And I also think this will be the least physical of the three games that will be played there because UConn and Texas are overly aggressive and overly physical teams. Where UCLA and South Carolina, they'll just match your intensity, they'll match your physicality, they'll match your aggressiveness. And I think they would rather play a more strategic game with skill. But if it gets physical, I think because of South Carolina's depth, it would work to their advantage because they do have other bigs. They do have more perimeter players. Where UCLA just basically runs six deep, And you've seen it over their last two games with Duke and Texas. They're only rolling out 6 players, and that can wear them down. And if the game is physical, that can really wear them down as well.
It's interesting that you say you like Raven Johnson because she was the player that spoke at the main press conference yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And this young lady just has like this ray of light around her. She just has this energy, this positive vibe, like she is just extremely likable. And, it's no surprise that Dawn Staley is unequivocal that Raven's her favorite player and that she's going to miss her more than any player she's ever had because of the energy that she brings. And, she's just this positive force and this positive energy, it's like a force multiplier on the right things to feel. And so when Dawn Staley talks about her program and she says, she says something along the lines of like, if it feels good, if it feels right, we keep doing it. If it doesn't feel right, then we don't do it. Right. And she says what she likes most about Raven is if something doesn't feel right, she'll say something about it. And she's not scared to do that. She's like, that's something that, and she said that trait carries you for the rest of your life. And so she just found that to be very special about her. Like if it don't feel right, she'll ask a question and she'll say something. It doesn't matter the circumstances or the culture or whatever. She's just genuinely saying, hey, like this just don't feel right. We need to talk about this. And so that special quality is likable. And in person, you just feel the energies. Like she just has this energy.
Mm-hmm. And she has the right coach for that because there have been players that have this don't feel right. And coach is like, this is my program. I run away. I run. And then you miss an opportunity, not that you're learning something, but have something where the players feel entitled and feel that they are helping managing your program instead of just being a person that's plugged into a system and they have to just do what you tell them to do, win, lose, or draw. But they're not understanding that they want the winning outcome. This is what's going to be better for our teammates. This is what's going to be better for us. Because, Marlo knows as a coach, you get stuck in your ways. You get stuck and you be like, no, that ain't going to work. But then you got to go, okay. They see something I don't see.
Right.
So,
let me let them try it.
Yeah. That takes a lot out of a coach's ego. Like, hey, man, this player came up with that play and that worked. And they think they're smarter than me. You just got to go with what works. You want them to be so intelligent that they can make plays or make things up on the fly and it works for you. It makes you look better.
Right. So we're going to wrap it up, but I want to close with this. There is no secret that I believe the quote is 92% or the stat is 92% of women in C-suite positions were athletes. So I just want to say shout out to all of these ladies because exactly what we just discussed about Raven Johnson, that is what being an athlete does to us. I mean, I don't know if it impacts men the exact same way, but for women, you are getting that teamwork, those leadership opportunities, and the ability to think independently. And those are definitely things that translate into the real world. And I, as someone that used to hire a lot of people, that trait is irreplaceable. Give me an athlete all day long. They know how to pivot. They know how to adjust. They know how to usually regulate their emotions, but they've got more experience in doing so. You have to learn how to lose as much as you have to learn how to win. You have to learn how to be injured and pick yourself back up and work harder to recover. There's so many life lessons that, us women get through sports that I just want to say, shout out to all of the women athletes. Keep up the good work.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you for listening to Huddle and Whistle. And we will see you next time with more on sports and entertainment.
All right.
Have fun, Terry.
I will. All right.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Huddle and Whistle Show. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your fellow sports fans. If you are a sponsor or a guest who wants to join us and bring your voice to the conversation, email us at info@marlonicoleproductions.com. Until next time, let's huddle up and blow the whistle.